Instead of spending thousands of dollars on ads and complicated JV launches, what if you could build up an audience of your ideal clients simply by being a guest on other people's podcasts? You are listening to Amplify Your Success Podcast, episode 455. And today I'm going back to one of my tried and true favorite strategies to build a list and to attract ideal clients. And that's being a guest on other people's platforms. You ready for this? Let's get started. Welcome to the Amplify Your Success Podcast. Get ready to ramp up your revenue, amplify your impact, and make your mark in the world. This is the show for experts, thought leaders, and service professionals who want to shatter their limits and achieve that next level. You're going to find out from other experts and influencers how they made it. Now, let's get amplified. Hey there, inspired entrepreneurs and business leader. It is your host, Melanie Benson, authority amplifier to expert-based entrepreneurs. And today I'm going to cover something as part of my 6-part series. I know I said it was a 5-part series before, but I realized it actually was 6. And that is about positioning your authority as part of a strategy to stand out in a market when you have a lot of competition. And part of the strategy is about getting known. And I can't think of a better way to help build up that known quality, that factor where people recognize what you're an expert in and why you, than being a guest on other people's podcasts. Now, I've been talking about this for years. Just being a guest on a show or a live stream or even a virtual or in-person stage is not enough to crack this visibility code. You really do have to have 3 key things in place, and that's what I'm going to cover today. Now, if you want to go deeper into this subject and you recognize you have been a guest or you've been thinking about being a guest and you cannot make this work for your business, you're not making the money, you're not getting enough invitations, you're pitching, you're not getting results, and maybe even you are getting on stages and podcasts, but you're not seeing any results. I want to invite you to go a little bit deeper because there's one of several things that could be working against you. I'll unpack a few of them here, but I have a resource, and I have been told by people that this free resource is probably one of the most impactful resources that they consumed as they were on their journey to really optimizing being a guest on other people's platforms. And it's called the 17 Common Mistakes that Guest Experts Make that cost them the lead and the client. And I created this after studying both sides of the microphone, what works for me, but also conversely, what wasn't working for clients and colleagues who turned to me and said, what are you doing that I'm not doing? And I gathered the 17 common places where you're probably doing something you thought would work, but it isn't, and it's working against you. So I can help you crack that visibility code and actually start seeing better results. So if you head over to MelanieBenson.com/scorecard, you can get this scorecard absolutely free. It's my gift to you. I invite you to download it immediately, review it, score yourself, and then, hey, give me a little shout out and let me know which one of those areas you're going to focus on improving. Now, this episode is really near and dear to my heart because about 10 years ago, I started to see how many opportunities there were to like get off the hamster wheel of traveling over and over and over again to different events, to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on ads, and for a lot of people trying to figure out what on earth was going to work on social media, and could quickly build trust and visibility in front of new audiences. And if you and I are new friends and you don't know a lot about my story, getting in front of audiences was what worked for me through collaboration partnerships. And I found that these new audiences, I mean, they were generating millions of dollars in business for me. It is a powerful way to attract new clients, but just because you're in front of this new audience doesn't mean you've figured out how to actually get the ROI you're looking for. And I have a lot of people that turn to me and say, it's not working. When you have a message that's really dialed in, and that message, I call it a lighthouse message, and your message is being experienced by a listener, and you're building this deep, powerful resonance with them. You're building a connection, you're establishing credibility and rapport, and they need and want what you offer. This is one of the best ways to deeply connect with them. And here's the key thing, and build trust by borrowing it from your host, borrowing that credibility they've already established with their listener base. As I mentioned, instead of spending an enormous amount of money on ads, and what works for a lot of people is organizing these very complicated and involved joint venture launches where your peers are promoting you, which is great for some people, but it's not something everybody can do because there's a lot of moving parts and it's a lot of work. Or hosting summits, which I will talk about in an upcoming episode, which is one of my favorites, but that's not for everybody. You can actually scale your reach and your income by borrowing the right podcasts, stages, and events without ever having to leave your office. Now, I tapped into this in the beginning because I was finding I was experiencing fatigue. I was wanting to be home more. I didn't want to be a road warrior. I didn't want to have to be traveling to events all over the world to speak anymore, even though that was wildly effective and still is, as we know from 2020. Sometimes live events are not going to always be an option, but podcasts are. Virtual events are always going to be here to stay. So if you have a really compelling message, a lighthouse message that attracts an ideal audience, and you've got this quality, this offer, this experience that you want to get in front of people, but you don't have a big enough audience, or you need to kind of establish some new energy on your audience, this is a really smart strategy. You also may want to consider this if you've pivoted your brand. Okay, raise your hand if this was the year that you pivoted your brand and okay, all of that build up, all that authority, all that brand positioning that I've done for however long you've had that business, it's gone out the window and I've got to do it all over again. So there's no better way to jumpstart your buzz and momentum around your brand and get known again by being a guest on other people's podcasts. This was part of why I started doing so many interviews. In 2009, 2010, I was kind of closing the energetic loop with a big implosion, but that's another story for another day, around that business that I had built. And I was seeking, like, what is my new thing? And as I started to land on it, I ended up feeling very invisible. I felt like I'm doing this great work. The people on my list know about it, but like, what about everybody else? And people hadn't caught up with the changes I'd gone through. And I started to create and use my methodology where I created content to share about what I was doing. And I had a couple of friends that invited me to their podcasts after hearing some of my posts and seeing what I was up to. And all of a sudden, the buzz and momentum took off, and I started getting a slew of invitations. Now, when you are ready to kind of get known for something new, you've got to figure out a way to kind of jumpstart that and get your community, your industry, your ideal client base to know what you're doing now. And this is a great way to do it. A third reason that could be really perfect is you've got a program, a service, or maybe a book that you would like to generate buyers for. Now, I want to set a little bit of a myth straight, and this has a little bit to do with some changes that are happening that I'm witnessing in the industry. Is there's not always a direct line between you being on a podcast and you getting a program spot sold. I'm going to share with you a little bit more what does work, but if you go into this and say, I'm not seeing people buy my program directly from being on a podcast, you're missing the entire power of the strategy. Okay, so I want you to think about, how can I get in front of new audiences all over the world, or speed up my visibility in front of people who need and want what I do? Podcast guesting, being on live streams, being on virtual events. I call them platforms. They're all virtual, they're all reachable and accessible. And the best way to start it is by being on podcasts. Now, let's talk about for a minute what might be getting in the way of you saying yes to this. Well, there's three big ones. And the first one is, what would I even say? Interestingly enough, I get this one. And when you go through a brand pivot, sometimes you have to connect the dots again between the work you're doing now and what you want to talk about on a podcast. And that might take a little while to figure out on your own. This is something that many of the people who join me in my Authority Accelerator program, and in particular go through the Launchpad phase, this is the biggest aha, is really starting to reconnect with the message and the power and the clarity of how to communicate your new brand, your new work in the world. So if that is a obstacle for you right now, like, I don't even know what I would talk about or who would want to hear what I had to say, let's squash that right now. And if there's a part of you that's like, well, I don't know if I'm ready to be visible, you are. You just need a little bit of guidance on how to package what you're doing and how to say what you do in a way that makes you feel confident and clear and it's compelling to the listeners. And that's super easy fix. A second one that I hear all the time is, this is feeling like a colossal waste of time. What if nothing is going to come out of this? And in terms of strategies, there's a lot of strategies you can pick from. I don't know of any that are as low cost as this one, once you learn how to be effective at it. And that doesn't necessarily mean rushing out and hiring a booking service or a booking agent or even a matchmaking. There's a lot of online portals that you can matchmake. Great, but it's still time. And you will waste it if you don't have your fundamentals in place. So yes, you could, and you don't have to. That's my answer for that one. Third, I've been podcast guesting. And I have been out there and I'm not seeing results. I believe there are some new rules emerging to be effective and see a return on your effort and your investment of time as a podcast guest. Because the way in which hosts and really aligned shows for you are going to say yes to you do not look the same as they did before this year. And I watched this trending, and as we entered this year, and I don't know if it's just the big AI surge or the popularity of podcasts has grown exponentially. I have a few suspicions, which I'll unpack at a later day. But let's just say, if you are trying to approach your podcast guesting the way you've watched other people do it, or the way you were taught 5 years ago, or the way it worked for you in 2000 and beyond and previously, it's not going to work. You're going to get frustrated by it. So you do need a refresh on your strategy, and you need to understand what's working now as we go forward. And I'm a huge fan of adapt and implement quickly, because you never know when something's going to shift, and it is shifting. So let's get into some of the fundamentals of how you're going to get this strategy to work for you. There is one key concept that I teach in everything I do, from Authority Accelerator to every masterclass I host to every program I have been hired to teach for someone else's event. And that is, if you don't have these three key pieces in place, none of it's going to work. And that is the right message in front of the right audience with the right invitation. Your invitation is your call to action. It's not an offer. It is a next step with you. And this is what it's like. You don't get these three pieces right and all the nuances inside of it, you might as well not pursue it, because it's not going to work for you. And this is why in my Authority Accelerator, the entire strategy is getting these three components right and dialing it in for where you are at right now with what your ideal clients need right now. So there's relevance and there's this compelling desire that you're building because you understand what's going to move them into action. So, right message, right audience with the right invitation. The second key fundamental piece that has to be in place is in the pitch. And I think this is where a lot of it gets sideways. I have a colleague of mine he's really big in the podcasting world. And he regularly talks about how annoyed he is by all of the pitches, the cold pitches he gets. And behind the scenes, you know what? We're all annoyed by it. Some of us have adapted and we've learned how to navigate it so that it's not so overwhelming. Part of the high class problem of having a popular podcast is you're going to get a lot of people that want to leverage that. But how you leverage that, how you approach it, how you pitch those hosts is going to make or break it. And gone are the days where, because you are a rock star or a celebrity, or you've got great content or some super amazing credentials, you're going to get on that show. If you don't know how to dial in your pitch to leverage the emotional component of your story, the impact potential, and the collaborative approach to being a guest, it's not going to work. So you can hire the best show booker on the planet. If they don't know how to do this for you, you're just shooting darts into the wind. Third, and I alluded to this already, these interviews, this exposure is building your brand. It's informing your community and your industry, who you are and what you do. Your job is to guide listeners into your sales journey. Now, you may actually have some of those sparks where people are like, oh, yeah, I need this now. And they'll make a quick decision. But a majority of your success will come by you recognizing you need to take ownership of what happens when they get into your ecosystem and you build a relationship with them. This is lead management. And I think we, at least for the current times, are seeing that the credibility, the trust, the relationship we build with people that come into our ecosystem matters more than ever. And if you just expect these quick sales, I think you're missing a significant amount of the potential revenue, but B, you're going to see short lifespan rather than long lifespan with the leads that you're working so hard to gather. And then last, and this is where so many podcast guests, they miss the boat completely. So if you've done this one, please know you are in good company. Don't stop your effort at the interview. The host relationship can be a visibility multiplier. There is a compounding effect that takes place. And if you don't know how to activate it and navigate it, you're probably missing a significant amount of the magnetic quality of your conversation. There is, I call it the $1 million network. As a fact, I'll link up the episode that I did around this, because when you approach this with the right mindset, this isn't a one and done interview. There is so much more at stake, so much more opportunity that could unfold here. And if you just go in and go interview, okay, I'm out, like, you're missing the gems. You're missing what could happen. When I talk about that I've built millions of dollars in sales from this kind of strategy, that's because I nurture the relationships with people beyond that conversation. Okay. And so there's a whole strategy around that that you're probably not tapping into. So I continue to be a fan of podcasts as a way to get in front of new audiences. But no, it's not just about the short-term sale. This is a business growth strategy. It is a visibility multiplier. But you got to know that it's more than just delivering a powerful conversation. It's everything you do before, during, and after that makes it work. And it's not rocket science. but it is strategy. It's something I've been studying since podcasts emerged and really since I started speaking in general. But I really started to understand the power of it with a few key relationships that emerged that took off like wildfire and turned into not just one interview, but 10, 15, 20 introductions, invitations, continued opportunities, referrals, cross promotion. There's so much more that's there. So I invite you to think about, what is your commitment to being in front of new audiences over the next 6 months to 12 months? Now is the right time to get your message in front of new audiences, but you need to start now to build the relationships, to get those pitches to be yeses, and to really get your strategy in place. So it's not just spewing information and throwing darts at a wall and hoping something sticks. It's actually you getting your message into your best client pipeline. All right, stay tuned for the next in our series. We've got one more to wrap it up coming your way. Thanks for tuning in today, Amplifier. We're going to keep this conversation going, and I want to hear from you how you're going to amplify your authority and make a greater impact. Before you go, please take a minute to give our show and our guests some love over on your favorite podcasting platform. Subscribe, rate, and review. Leave your full name, and I'll spotlight you and your authority on social media.